Welcome, everybody, to NEO's first developer conference here in the lovely San Francisco, NEO DevCon. Super happy to see you guys. Looking forward to the next 2 days. We got some awesome speakers, some great panels where you're going to get to see these experts interact in real time, and then some workshops after the event where you're going to, whether you're a developer and want to learn how to better build into NEO, or just get more familiar with the platform. Very open community, so looking forward to that. My name is Alex Moskov, and I'm the editor-in-chief at Coin Central. And we have been writing about these projects for over a year, so it's very exciting to see everybody come together in one big room and get to see a lot of the speakers, do their thing. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker, Scott Hunter. Scott joined Microsoft in 2007 and has been a core member from the ASP.NET team. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you. I got a lav on. Oh, yeah. Cool. Well, I'm super happy to kick this off. I'm super happy that C# is here today to be a part of the blockchain world. And I thought I'd actually try to have a little bit of fun on this startup. And the best way to have fun is to make fun of myself and my company. So to start with, the funny thing is I work on .NET at Microsoft, specifically .NET Core. But I'm supposed to be building Java tools. We had a product called Visual J++ that we shipped in 1997. And it had a bunch of improvements to Java that Sun did not like. It had better ways of calling native code. It had better ways of doing delegates. And so they were not happy with us. They're like, hey, that's not really Java. That's Microsoft Java. And so they sued us. They're still suing people today. Obviously, Google's being sued by Oracle today for using Java as well. And so because of this, I build C# tools instead. So we took all those features that we had added to Java, and we added them to C#. And we took all the frameworks we built on Java, and we moved them to C# as well. And that's what made up the .NET platform. So then to look forward to that, we sort of slide out of sync, guys. Still out of sync? Okay, there we go. And then we announced this funny thing, because we're Microsoft. We sort of open sourced it. We did this thing called the Microsoft Shared Source.NET. This is a great product. It had none of the source code from the .NET framework in it. But you could download it and compile it, and it would maybe run your .NET code. And so this was the early entries of Microsoft and open source. Let's move forward a little bit. It was, however, .NET was really successful. We roughly have, these numbers are a little old, but there's 1.8 billion installs of .NET today. There's about 6 million developers building on top of .NET, and it's on a variety of platforms. And we also, at the same time, we branded every Microsoft product .NET. There was Windows.NET, crazy marketing people. So anyway, let's move forward. And of course, if it's really successful, what do? You make lots of them. You can't just have one. That would be too simple. So we built .NET Framework, .NET Compact, .NET Embedded, Silverlight, and a bunch of Windows Phone things. But we built lots of these things. And then, of course, I'm part of the team, and so what do? I make another one. And so this is about 3 years ago, we built .NET Core. And we try to unify all our .NET platforms. And so today we have .NET Framework for building Windows applications. We have .NET Core for building apps that run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And we have Xamarin for building .NET apps that run on iOS and Android and Mac. .NET Core especially is I think, awesome because it doesn't require any Microsoft tooling. You can just do it from command line. All the popular editors work with it. It works on all the platforms. It's completely open source, and it's free. So that's .NET Core. This just kind of clarifies that here's all my free tool chains. And I've got this .NET Standard library that is the same code base across all these. But let's move forward. And then, of course, we really open source .NET Core. So now we're modern Microsoft, we're cloud ready, and that's kind of what happened at work when this happened. That's my boss. No. So to move forward, this kind of just shows our journey. So we as a team and a company kind of learned this whole path of open sourcing. So we did small things like making part of C# and ECMASpec way back in the days. Some of the ASP.NET stuff we actually open sourced in 2008 and in 2012. Then our compilers. You can see this journey as we went along the path, and more of .NET becomes completely open source. Now what's really cool is there is the open source where you just throw something over the fence and call it open source, and there's the open source when the community actually picks up and takes off with what you're working on. And so this is kind of a cool stat that we put together. This is right about the time that we open sourced .NET Core, and what we did is this map shows a measurement where what we did is we took, if you got a comment, you were 1 point, a pull request was 10 points, and an issue was 5 points. And you can see what that looks like in 2015. Now let's move forward to last year. That gets bigger. And let's move forward to this. So as of today, .NET is no longer really a Microsoft-run project from the standpoint that about half of all the contributions to .NET are actually done by the community. And we're super happy to see this. This is not just throw it over the fence. This is the world actually working on .NET. Another cool thing is I was making fun of ourselves in open source early. Samsung is one of the biggest contributors to .NET. Google is also a big contributor to .NET. Samsung is especially funny because I use this with my wife. I'm like, the new TVs that Samsung's coming out with, the next generation, I think they're around the Super Bowl, they will actually have .NET inside of them as part of the Tizen platform. .NET becomes the key mechanism for building applications for Tizen. And so, of course, I want to use this to go ask for a new television, because if I have a TV, I want to be able to program my TV, of course. And they chose us because we don't sue people for using .NET, unlike, as I said, Oracle suing Google for using Java. So that's a cool thing. We have a company that built a bunch of games on top of .NET, massive multiplayer online games, and they actually are responsible for about half of our performance gains in .NET Core. So I have to thank them. We just really shipped .NET Core March of last year. And I said our total .NET base is about 6 million, but .NET Core, over just 8 to 9, 10 months, has already got to the point of crossing 500,000 developers. So I'm very happy to say that 500,000 developers in less than a year, I'll take it. So super happy about that. This is kind of cool too. When we shipped .NET Core, last year's Stack Overflow developer survey, we came out as the #3 framework, which is pretty cool, being that we'd only existed for just a few months at that point. So I'll take that spot. And C# is one of the most popular languages out there still, so happy about that. This is showing one of the big things we try to do with the .NET Core world is these are not Microsoft benchmarks. We actually benchmark .NET using a public benchmark called TechEmpower. That we don't run it, doesn't run in our labs. And you can see how we compare to things like Java Servlet, Node.js, Express, PHP. I'm especially proud of the fact that our web framework, MVC, that means you're not just running .NET Core, you're running a big framework on top of it, is still faster than Node without a framework like Express running on top of it. So awesome performance, and more of it's coming. So one of the things they asked me to come and talk today about was, what are we doing in the next version of .NET? And the next version of .NET we have is going to be .NET Core 2.1. This is going to ship a preview in about a week and a half. And there's a whole bunch of big waves that we're trying to do here. One is we have great runtime performance. Our design time performance, if you're building on your machine, is not great, so we're going to have faster build performance. We have these web frameworks, ASP.NET and Entity Framework, Data Framework, and we're basically trying to keep closing the gaps between the versions of those that exist in the full .NET framework. And then once again, we have this .NET Framework, which is the thing we've been shipping for a long time that ran on Windows only. We're trying to add more compatibility to .NET Core, so it's easier for people to take some of their older code. Then I don't know if anybody in the room knows what GDPR is. Anybody know what that is? Nobody knows what GDPR is? A few people. GDPR is that annoying click to accept the privacy on every website you go to that we can thank the EU for. And we're building all that tech directly into our web frameworks as well, so you will just get that out of the box. They don't have to actually do anything. Then a big thing as well is microservice is another term that's been beat to death by everybody. We hear that term more than we ever should. And so we're building more support for microservices into .NET Core. And I love to make fun of myself. I joined and took over the entire .NET team about 2 years ago. And when we did, I was actually part of the ASP.NET team. So it was the ASP.NET team and the .NET team. We never merged the two engineering systems. And so for us to get a build of .NET Core actually took about 3 days, which just seems insane. We can build Windows in like 4 hours, and we can build .NET Core in 3 days. And so we're actually properly merging the team so we can actually build our entire product. I was going to show, this is the improvements in build time. You're going to see that we're showing on the left side what a small app looks like, and you can see they're actually very similar. But you can see large apps in .NET Core had really bad build times, and you can see where they're getting much, much better, down to 6.8 seconds in the 2.1 time frame, and they'll go actually below 2 seconds beyond that. So much better tooling performance. I thought I'd talk a little bit about cool, nerdy stuff. We're adding some cool features in .NET Core for high-performance applications. One of these is all of our apps probably use arrays. They use or memory stream, some kind of stream, some kind of piece of data, and then you want to copy that and take a piece of that out. I think of a web server as a great example. A request comes into the web server, and what we do is we take that big pile of bytes and we take some of that and say, this goes to this header, this goes to this header, this goes to this header. And as you do, you basically duplicate all that memory. So we're actually adding features to C# and to .NET that lets you actually take an array and project pieces of it into other types, thus not using memory. So that's an interesting thing. Another thing is, obviously, in the world of AI and ML, we're doing a lot of work to go make that kind of tech work great in .NET. And so we're actually adding tensor types directly to the platform. So you're going to see a bunch of AI types live in .NET. Next one that's I think should be interesting to this room, if you're doing any blockchain kind of stuff, we already have a high-performance networking stack. We've made it 10 times faster in .NET Core 2.1. So if you're making client requests, those are much, much faster. And we also took our web server, which I was showing before was about 25% faster in 2.0. It'll become faster again because we actually rebuilt the socket system. We used to be on libuv, which is the library that Node.js runs on top of, and now we're on a custom socket implementation that we wrote. More crypto, more compatibility, less size, so a bunch of cool stuff coming in the next framework. And finally, I'll talk about our CLI, better interlude performance, global tools. If anybody uses Node, this is the equivalent of npm-g install SG that we're adding in, and some better versioning and blah, blah, blah stuff there. This is going to ship in about 2 weeks, the first preview, and we'll have this out by May or June in RTM format for everybody to use. And then one of the things, what I'm here about is it's fun for us to go see C# being used in places that you never would have seen it probably in the past. Back when we were a Windows-only technology, I probably would not be on stage at a blockchain conference or and be talking about these types of things. But it's cool to see things like this, and obviously things like this are super, super exciting for me in .NET to see all the new places that you can see and people use .NET. And then finally, I just wanted to close down and say we have a great page on my website called .NET/architecture, which has a bunch of awesome PDF guides for building apps with .NET. And if you have any questions about .NET, Microsoft, please email me, scott.hunter@microsoft.com. I hope you guys have a great conference today. Thanks for having me out here to kick this thing off, and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.